My mom had been stealing from my inheritance for 6 years. She fabricated every single quarterly statement she ever mailed me, and she planned to let me find out when I turned 30 and the account came up empty. Let me back up. My name is Claire. I'm 31 now. My dad, Robert, died when I was 22. Cancer. It was fast. 9 months from diagnosis to gone. He was 61 years old. Still coaching Little League on weekends. Still bringing my mom coffee in bed every morning. He was the kind of man who had 300 people in his phone contacts and remembered every single one of their birthdays. Dad was a civil engineer. Not flashy rich, but careful with money his whole adult life. He owned a small firm with 2 partners, had a modest investment portfolio, and paid off the family home in Clarkson, Ohio 11 years before he died. When he passed, his estate came out to roughly $620,000 after taxes. He split it 3 ways. My mom, Patricia, got the house and $240,000 outright. My older sister, Diane, who was 26 at the time, got $130,000. And I got a trust. Dad set up the trust specifically for me because I was still in college and he didn't want me doing something stupid with a large sum of money at 22. Smart man. He was right. The trust held $250,000 and it was set to release to me in full on my 30th birthday, February 14th, Valentine's Day. Dad always thought that was funny, giving his youngest daughter financial security on the most commercially romantic day of the year. The trustee was my mom. She was also the executor of the estate, and for 8 years after Dad died, I had absolutely no reason to doubt her. Here's the thing about my mom and me. We were close. I don't say that loosely. I drove 4 hours round trip every Thanksgiving for 8 consecutive years. I flew home for her knee surgery in 2019 and slept on the couch in her hospital room for 2 nights. When her car transmission died in April 2020 and the dealership wanted $4,200 to fix it, I paid $3,000 of that bill myself because I had savings and I wanted to help. I called her every Sunday. I sent flowers on her birthday, Mother's Day, and the anniversary of Dad's death. I showed up. Every time. My sister Diane is 4 years older than me. We were never super close growing up. She was always a little competitive, a little cold, but I made an effort as adults. I went to her wedding in 2018. I bought her and her husband Greg a $600 stand mixer because it was on her registry and I wanted to be generous. And in 2021, when she and Greg were going through a rough patch, I babysat her kids, Lily and Owen, 6 weekends in a row. 6 weekends. I drove back and forth to Clarkson and slept in their guest room and fed those kids and put them to bed while Diane and Greg went to couples therapy. I trusted both of them completely. That's the part that still makes my stomach hurt. I work in Columbus as a project coordinator for a mid-size construction company. I make decent money, about $68,000 a year, but I'm not rolling in it. I rent a 1-bedroom apartment. I drive a 2017 Honda Civic with 94,000 miles on it. I have student loans I've been chipping away at for years. The trust was supposed to be my reset button. Pay off the loans, put a down payment on a house, start actually building something. For years, my mom mailed me quarterly trust statements, or what I thought were quarterly trust statements. They were printed PDFs showing the balance, any earnings, any administrative fees. The balance grew slowly but steadily, because she told me the trust was invested conservatively in municipal bonds. By the time I was 29, the statements showed a balance of $268,000. I actually cried a little when I opened that last one. Then in January of last year, about 6 weeks before my 30th birthday, I got a card in the mail from my Aunt Vivienne. Vivienne is my dad's sister. She lives in Portland. We don't see each other often, but she's always been warm with me. The card was an early birthday card with a handwritten note inside. It said, "Claire, I know your birthday is coming up, and I know what that means for the trust. I hope it gives you everything Robert wanted for you. Call me sometime." Nothing alarming in those words, but it made me actually think about the trust for the first time in a while, and it made me realize something. I had never once verified anything directly with the bank. I had just trusted the statements my mom printed and mailed me. So I called Ridgewood Community Bank in Clarkson. That's where my dad had all his accounts. I asked to speak with someone about a trust account I was the beneficiary of, set up under the name Robert A. Calloway. The woman on the phone pulled up the account and went quiet for a second. Then she asked me to verify my identity. I did. Then she said the balance was $63,400. I asked her to repeat that. $63,400. I sat at my kitchen table, the one I bought at a garage sale for $40, and sanded and restained myself, and I couldn't speak for about 30 seconds. Then I asked her when the last withdrawal was made. 2 weeks ago. $14,000. Before that, $11,500 in October. Before that, $18,000 in June. I asked who had authorization to make withdrawals. The trustee, she said. Patricia Calloway. I drove to Clarkson the next morning. Left at 6 in the morning. Didn't call ahead, just drove. I pulled into my mom's driveway at 10:08 on a Wednesday morning in January. Her car was there, so was Diane's minivan, which was unusual for a Wednesday. I didn't think much of it until I walked up to the front door and heard them talking through the storm door, which wasn't fully latched. I heard my mom say, "She's not going to know until February, we have time." I heard Diane say, "What if she calls the bank?" My mom said, "She never calls the bank, she never has." I stood on that porch for maybe 10 seconds, then I opened the door and walked in. They were sitting at the kitchen table. Mom had her reading glasses on, papers spread out in front of her. Diane had a coffee mug halfway to her mouth. Both of them went completely still when they saw me. I didn't yell. I'm not a yeller. I stood in the doorway and said, "The bank told me there's $63,000 left. Where is the rest of it?" My mom took off her glasses slowly, folded them, set them on the table. Then she said, "I was going to talk to you about that." I said, "When? On my birthday?" Then my mom started to cry, real tears, chin wobbling, the whole thing. And she said, "Your father's money was supposed to take care of all of us, not just you." That hit me like a slap. I stood there and let it land. Then I said, "Dad left you $240,000. He left you the house. He set up my trust specifically so it wouldn't be touched." She wiped her face. "Things got expensive, Claire. You have no idea what this house costs to maintain." Diane jumped in, "And I needed help after the thing with Greg. You know that year was brutal for us." I looked at Diane and said, "You took money from my trust?" She looked at Mom. Mom looked at the table. I walked out. I drove to a McDonald's parking lot 2 miles away, and I sat there for an hour. Then I drove back to Columbus. By the time I got home that night, I had 47 notifications. My mom had called 8 times. Diane had texted 12 times. Then the wider family piled on. My Aunt Sandra, my mom's sister, called at 9 in the evening and said, "Your mother is devastated. She made some mistakes, but she loves you. And she needs your grace right now." My cousin Brenda texted me, "I think you need to take a breath before you do anything you'll regret. Family is family." My mom's lifelong friend Kathleen, who I've known since I was 8 years old, left a voicemail saying my mom wasn't a bad person and was just doing her best after losing my dad. Then there was the family group chat. My mom had sent a message to the whole group, aunts, cousins, second cousins, that said she'd borrowed from the trust and that Claire was very upset and she was asking for prayers for the family. Borrowed, that word. Diane also sent me a long text, and I mean long, like 12 paragraphs, explaining that after the trouble with Greg, she'd asked Mom for help, and Mom had suggested using trust money as a temporary loan they would pay back before my birthday. She said it was never supposed to be permanent. She said she felt terrible. She said she loved me. I didn't respond to any of them that night. The next morning, I called Aunt Vivienne in Portland. She picked up on the second ring. I told her everything, what I found at the bank, what I overheard, what my mom had said at that kitchen table. Vivienne was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Claire, I need to tell you something." The way she said it, I knew it was going to be bad. She told me that after Dad died, she and his other sister had flagged concerns to my mom about how the estate was being handled. Nothing specific, just a general feeling. My mom had shut them out of every estate conversation and reminded them she was the executor and the trustee, and that was final. Vivienne hadn't pushed it. She regretted that now. Then she told me something else. About 4 years ago, she'd heard through a family friend. that Diane and Greg had opened a restaurant, a small brunch spot in the suburb where they lived. Vivienne had assumed they had investors, or a small business loan. She had never connected it to my trust. I pulled up the restaurant online while Vivienne was still on the phone. It opened in March of 2020. There was a write-up in a local lifestyle magazine from 2021. It said the owners had invested their savings and a family loan to get it off the ground. I called the bank again that afternoon and asked for the full transaction history on the trust account, going back to the date it was established. They mailed it to me in 3 business days. 11 pages. I spread those 11 pages out on my kitchen floor and went through every single line with a highlighter. Here's what I found. The withdrawal started 14 months after my dad died. Small at first. $3,000 here, $5,000 there. My mom had written things like administrative fee and investment adjustment in the memo lines. In year 2, the amounts went up. $8,000 in the spring, $12,000 in the fall. Then in year 3, right around when Diane's restaurant opened, there were 3 withdrawals totaling $47,000 over a 14-month stretch. $47,000. Over 6 years, my mom had taken out $186,600 from my trust. She had left $63,400. And those quarterly statements she'd been mailing me, every single one showing steady growth, were fabricated. She had been printing fake documents. The numbers, the fund names, the account information at the top. All of it made up. I sat on my kitchen floor with those 11 pages, and I did not cry. I was past crying. I was somewhere colder than that. I want to be specific about what that money was supposed to mean. $250,000 was going to pay off my $34,000 in student loans. It was going to give me a $180,000 down payment on a house in Columbus, a solid 2-bedroom in a neighborhood I actually liked. The rest was going into a retirement account and an emergency fund. My dad had designed this for me. He had thought about my future specifically, built a legal structure around it, and trusted the person he loved most to protect it. My mom took that money and handed a significant chunk of it to Diane and Greg so they could open a brunch restaurant. A brunch restaurant that, as of last year, had 3.5 stars on review sites and a noise complaint on record with the county. I hired a lawyer. Her name is Deborah. A friend from work had used her in a contract dispute and said she was sharp and direct. I called Deborah on a Friday morning, told her the situation, and had a meeting scheduled for the following Monday. Deborah went through the transaction records, the trust documents, and the fake statements. She used the word fraud within the first 20 minutes. She said what my mom had done: fabricating financial statements, making unauthorized withdrawals, misrepresenting the trust balance, was not a gray area. It was trustee misconduct, and it likely constituted criminal fraud. She said I had a strong case for full recovery of the funds, including from Diane and Greg, if we could show they knowingly received trust money. I told her to file. Deborah sent a formal demand letter to my mom on February 3rd, 11 days before my 30th birthday. The letter outlined the unauthorized withdrawals, the fabricated statements, and the legal exposure my mom was facing. It demanded full restitution of $186,600 within 30 days, or we would proceed with civil litigation and refer the matter to the county district attorney. My mom received it on February 5th. I know this because on February 5th, at 2:47 in the afternoon, she called me 17 times in a row. I did not pick up. She left 2 voicemails. The first one was crying, asking me to please talk to her, that she was scared and she loved me. The second one was angrier. She said I was tearing the family apart. She said Dad would be horrified by what I was doing. I saved both voicemails for Deborah. Then the second wave hit, and it was worse. Diane texted me, "I can't believe you're suing our mother. She could go to jail, Claire. Do you understand that? Our mother could go to jail." Aunt Sandra called again, and this time she wasn't gentle. She said what I was doing to my mother was unforgivable, that Dad would be sick. I actually picked up that call because I was tired of voicemails. I let Sandra say her piece. Then I said my dad set up that trust to protect my future. His own wife stole from it for 6 years. I'm the one who should be angry about what Dad would think. Sandra hung up. The family group chat got worse. My mom posted an update saying she was going through a very hard time and hoping the family would pray for healing. A dozen heart emojis from various relatives. My cousin Brenda commented, "We love you, Patricia. Family gets through things together." I left the group chat. Then I blocked Diane. Then I blocked my mom. Then I blocked Sandra. I kept Danny, my cousin who'd texted me privately and said what he saw in that group chat felt off. And I kept Vivienne. Danny texted me after I left the chat and said, "I got curious and looked into trust laws a little. Claire, you're not wrong. Don't back down." The civil case moved forward through the spring. My mom retained a lawyer who argued the withdrawals were administrative expenses and informal family loans authorized by an oral agreement with my father before he died. Deborah called me after reading that and said, "That argument has approximately 0% chance of working, but okay." Diane and Greg hired a separate lawyer. Theirs argued that they had no knowledge the money came from the trust. They'd understood it was a personal loan from Patricia. Deborah subpoenaed their text messages and emails going back to 2019. That produced some interesting documents. In a text exchange from October 2019, Diane had messaged my mom, "Did you check if taking more from Claire's thing will cause any problems with the account?" My mom had responded, "No, I looked at it. She won't know until she's 30, and by then we'll figure it out." Diane, "Okay, we need at least $30,000 to get through the renovation." Mom, "I'll take care of it." Deborah put that in a filing. I have a copy. The case settled in September. 9 months after I found out. 8 months after Deborah filed. My mom and Diane agreed to pay back $186,600 in full. Because my mom had already burned through most of her liquid assets over the years, including a big chunk of the $240,000 Dad had left her, she agreed to take a second mortgage on the Clarkson house to cover her portion. Diane and Greg covered $74,000 by liquidating part of the restaurant. The restaurant closed 2 months after the settlement. I don't know if those things are connected. I don't spend much time thinking about it. As part of the settlement, my mom also acknowledged in writing that the quarterly statements she had mailed me were not accurate representations of the trust balance. Deborah wanted that on the record. No criminal charges were ultimately filed. The district attorney reviewed the case and decided the civil settlement was sufficient. I'm not thrilled about that, honestly. But Deborah said full restitution, a documented written acknowledgement, and a judgment on record was better than most people in this situation ever get. So I took it. I got $186,600 back, plus interest and legal fees, which the settlement also covered, so Deborah's costs came out of the settlement and not my pocket. I paid off my student loans the week the money hit my account. All $34,200. I logged into the loan servicer website, looked at the payoff amount, and transferred the funds. The confirmation screen said, "Your loan balance is $0." I stared at that for a while. In November, I closed on a house. 3 bedrooms, quiet part of Columbus, a yard, a garage, original hardwood floors from 1962 that somebody had covered with carpet for reasons I will never understand. I've been refinishing them section by section on weekends. The kitchen needs work, but the bones are good. I put $175,000 down. My mortgage is $880 a month. Vivienne called me on my birthday, February 14th. She sang happy birthday, badly, and made me laugh for the first time in 2 weeks. She said, "Your dad would be proud of you. I know that for a fact." She came to visit in Columbus in December. I took her to a really good Italian place downtown. She brought me a framed photo of my dad from the mid-90s. He's laughing at something, squinting in the sun. It's on the mantle in my new house now. I have not spoken to my mom since February 5th of last year, the day she called me 17 times in a row. I unblocked her number in December once the case was fully resolved. She texted me once in January. It said, "I hope you're well. I'd like to talk when you're ready." I read it. I didn't respond. I'm not ready. I don't know if I'll get there. I haven't spoken to Diane either. She and Greg are apparently renting a smaller apartment now. I heard that from Danny, who keeps in touch with both sides of the family and reports back to me when I ask. I don't ask often. Sandra softened after the settlement. She texted me in October to say she hadn't known the full picture and was sorry for some of the things she'd said. I appreciated that. I didn't block her again, but I haven't called her either. The thing I keep coming back to is this. My mom had 6 years. 6 years to say something. 6 years to tell me she had made mistakes with the trust and needed to make it right. 6 years to do literally anything other than print fake statements and pretend everything was fine while she drained the account my father built for me. She chose to stay quiet until I walked through that door, and even then her first move was to cry and tell me my dad's money was supposed to take care of all of them. I don't hate her. I want to be clear about that. I don't hate Diane either. What I feel is more like grief. I lost my dad at 22, and I thought I still had my family. I lost those relationships standing in my mom's kitchen in January, in a coat I hadn't even taken off yet. That's a lot to carry. But I'm okay. I genuinely am okay. I wake up on Saturday mornings in my house and make coffee, and look out at my yard, and think about what I want to plant in the spring. I call Vivienne every couple of weeks. I have good friends at work. I went on a few dates this past fall. Nothing serious yet, but I'm not ruling anything out. My dad wanted me to have a foundation. He thought about it hard enough that he built a legal structure around it, put it in writing, and trusted the person he loved most to protect it. That trust was broken. But I got the foundation anyway. I finally have it now, and I know he'd be glad about that. So I want to ask you, would you have done the same thing? Would you have pushed harder for criminal charges, or settled like I did? And after everything, would you have tried to keep the relationship with your mom? Drop it in the comments. I want to know.